to have with us this morning the Springboro High School Chamber Choir, and they're going to be singing the national anthem. So if you would, veterans can either remove their caps or render a salute.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Well, as you know, the mayor, John Agenbroad, was in charge of the weather this morning.
I failed you again. What can I say?
Plan to have the junior ROTC post the colors in front of the building once again, and have the choir join us, of course. And, well, the mayor's been busy, and he hasn't taken care of the things he should take care of. But on this Veterans Day, I'm pleased to present my friend, Mayor John Agenbroad, Vietnam veteran. Sir,
All
over to
right,
you.
okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Veterans Day. I take real pride with the veterans. Obviously, being one, and those who served and raised their right hand and said, yes, I will commit my life to this great country we live in. So we have what we have because of our vets. I spoke with a bunch of third graders this week, and Maureen was put it all together. And one of the questions I asked the little kids, I said, on election day, I said, what's today? And they said, election day. I said, what's Thursday? Oh, I don't know. I said, it's Veterans Day. I said, we would not have election day if it wasn't for our veterans. World War II veterans, our heroes, the greatest generation of all time, they really paved the way for us to not be speaking Japanese and having the privilege to vote and do all the good things we do each and every day. So my hat's off to all my fellow vets. Hats off to the Springboro Historical Society. They do so much for the community to bring people together, the history, the rich history of this community, and veterans is no exception. So Mike, to you and all your counterparts who help make this great place, thank you for all the things you do. Keep the history going. We do have, the mayor failed you a little bit on the weather today, but he did bring some red, white, and blue flags, and Mike will take care of those. So it's always a privilege to be here. Yesterday I got to hear the Marine Corps hymn, Hoorah, and that was a good day. It makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck, and then when our choir does the national anthem, it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck as well. Great job. Thank you very much. God bless USA. God bless Springboro. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Well, if you had cause to read the Dayton Daily News recently, you'll notice that there are exactly 6,000 events this morning for veterans. And so I appreciate the veterans who participated this morning, and we'll probably have more leading up till noon when our coffee and donuts will run out. And the donuts will run out because we're giving a lot of the donuts to the choir.
Well, if you run out of donuts, just call my police department, and they will be here. They love coffee and donuts. But they stay in shape. They're young and mean.
So again, I want to thank the Chamber Choir. You guys are fabulous. I'd like to thank the mayor, and I'd like to thank everyone who showed up this morning to help us express gratitude to our veterans. And to the veterans in the group, thank you so much for serving. And with that, I think it's donut time.
There you go.
Is that right? Yeah, well, my name is Bernie Kopic. I was drafted in the Army in 1957. I had just finished serving an apprenticeship as a tool maker at Wright Aircraft Corporation, and like the day after that, I got drafted. Now, I got kind of lucky. The draft board, number 90, I didn't want to leave because I had just finished a new race car. And if I'm gone for the summer, gone for 2 years, the race car will be obsolete by the time I get back. So I went down and talked to Grace Heck. Grace Heck, and I took my scrapbook with me. She said, we'll do what we can, but I can't make any promises. So they waited till November. I got drafted in November. I got to race the car all year and destroy it at the end of the year. So I got drafted into the United States Army. I went through infantry basic training, and then I went through armor training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I'm not bragging when I say this, but I graduated at the head of my class. So they kept me for another cycle as a drill instructor for college ROTC students that are going to graduate that year and become a lieutenant. They went through armor training with us. And I had a lot of fun with that, but there was a lot of things you couldn't do with these people. You couldn't use bad language. You couldn't touch them. There was a lot of no-nos with these cadets. So an old sergeant said, Bernie, here's what you do. Get you a clove of garlic. When you need to dress one of these down, back them up against something, get nose to nose with them, and Bernie, I guarantee you they will not want to repeat that. Well, the word got around the platoon, Kopic's got the worst breath of anybody I've ever seen. The Army was good for me. It settled me down. I gained weight. I was 145 pounds when I went in the Army, 165 when I got out of basic. And I was still 165, and I don't know where that went. It's in there somewhere. Yeah, I got an assignment to, I was a drill instructor for one series, what I was just talking about. And during this period, I got orders to go to Fort Devens in Massachusetts. And I drove a APC, Armored Personnel Carrier, for the brigade commander. It was his Mobile Field headquarters. And that's what I did up there. I spent a little over a year in Fort Devens in Massachusetts. Yes, I went in on November the 13th, 1957, and was discharged on November the 12th, 1959. And they do that so you always owe the Army a day. I did 2 years active reserve, and I was in the 2-year period of inactive reserve when I was recalled to active duty for the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we met twice a week at the Ohio Bus Garage downtown in Dayton. And we did that for about a month, I guess. And then it started getting more and more serious. They had us move in down there, worst place I ever lived. We went so far as to, I was a tank commander, an M48A1. So we were ready, we went to Wilmington, which was an Air Guard base, waiting for orders to fly to Florida. We're going to leave Florida, we're going to go in through Guantanamo. We'd had these, they built up these things that looked like Cuba, so I knew exactly what my objective was, where our tanks were going to go, and they called it off that day. And I think what happened was, I found this out later, President Kennedy wanted to nuke Cuba, and his brother talked him out of it. And I think the Russians thought, we've got a loose cannon in the White House, we better be careful. Yeah, I got involved with honor flight in 2007. I was in Oshkosh at a fly-in, and my wife called me. She never calls me when I go to a fly-in. She's telling me all about honor flight. Here's a number. She said, call this number and find out. Well, I didn't. So the next day she calls me back. What'd you find out? Well, I didn't call. Well, everybody calls me Bernie, but when she's a little upset with me, it's Bernard. And on the phone she says, Bernard, it would be in your best interest to make that phone call. Mike, it was one of the best phone calls I ever made. I got involved with Honor Flight, whose mission is, at that time, transport World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. to be honored at their memorials. And it's since branched out. We take Korean veterans, like you went as a guardian for your father-in-law, and we take Vietnam veterans. And I'm a, 2007, 15-year veteran? 15-year-old volunteer. By the way, Honor Flight Dayton, no one gets paid. Everyone at Honor Flight Dayton is a volunteer. Well, I'm very proud to have been a veteran. My daughter's a veteran. I've got 2 sons that are veterans. We're a very patriotic family. And I'm finding out in these trips we take, we've made 24 trips with a motorhome. They took me one time in the airplane as a veteran, as a Vietnam era. I was not in Vietnam, but I was in during that era. So I took the airplane trip with them. We've made 24 trips. I've met some of the most wonderful people in the world. And the one big thing that stands out about all these veterans is they never complain. We've had days when it rained so hard you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, no complaints. Days when it was so hot you couldn't get enough water, no complaints. They just don't complain. We try to get the veterans to tell us, what can we do to make this better for you? They won't say anything. Well, one of them was a good friend of mine. He said, Bernie, they're not going to say anything. They're afraid if they do, you'll think they're complaining. So they just don't say anything. I go to a lot of Veterans Affairs yesterday. We went to Warren Correctional Institute, where the incarcerated veterans put on the Veterans Day program. And Mike, it is outstanding. They really do a tremendous job. Now, all these veterans that are in there right now are too young for us to take them to Washington, D.C. But when their time is up and they're cleared, we'll take them. Well, just be proud of your service, be proud of your country and your flag, and keep up the good work.
So what we do with Veteran Services in Warren County is we provide transportation services for veterans to get to and from medical appointments. We provide emergency financial assistance when a veteran is in need, maybe their finances, they've lost a job or they're going through some kind of difficult time legally. They can come to the Veterans Services Commission, seek financial assistance, get help with rent, food, groceries, and in some cases we can put them in some temporary facilities if they're homeless. But those are some of the things we do at the county to stay active and make sure veterans in Warren County know of what services and benefits are available to them within their own county. So my role there right now is I'm actually the president for this past year, so I'm kind of coming to the end of my term here at the end of December, up for reappointment actually right now. So by January I should be reappointed to the board and will start my second term as a board member. I believe the number is right around 19,000. Veterans, and then of course there's family members along with that. That number might be a couple of years old, but I think we've got quite a number of veterans in Warren County that we service. I am a veteran. Yeah, I'm actually a retired Air Force Master Sergeant. I served for 20 years from 1995 until 2014. So I retired actually a little bit early. There was an early retirement program that came out during the Obama administration, and I just happened to meet that, and so I retired with 19 years, 8 months, and about 3 days. So for about 5 years now, I met Jerry Ferris years ago when I was actually working as a financial advisor at the corner down here in Midwestern Wealth Management, and that's where I met John the mayor as well. And we developed a friendship, and of course they knew I was a veteran at the time, so we started talking about things like this. I had a good friend of mine that committed suicide about 11 years ago. He was my best friend, and as a result of that, it triggered in me something, a passion that I can't explain other than I will spend the rest of my life trying to stamp out veteran suicide, and that's kind of how I got connected with them and got onto the board. As part of that, over the course of time, Warren County has developed something called the Warren County Veteran Suicide Prevention Coalition, and I have begun being part of that. And one of the things that they're trying to do is specifically design programs in Warren County to assist and reduce the number of veteran suicides in Warren County. So one of the projects we have going right now is this survey. We've got this QR code that if people want to link to this QR code, they can go take about a 5-minute survey. They can do it on their phone, iPad, computer, and it'll give the Warren County Veteran Suicide Prevention Coalition the data to analyze, to look at what services are in Warren County and how to best utilize what's available for our veterans in Warren County to reduce those numbers of suicides. There's a new number that the VA has set up where you can call. That's dial 899 is the number. You call that and you're immediately connected with somebody, and they can put you in touch with someone that can walk you through that stressful situation, help calm things down, and get you the assistance that you need, direct medical care if that's what it is. But yes, there is a fairly new number to call. Yeah, I personally don't have those numbers available to me, but as an overall program, I know the VA is focused tremendously on it, and I know that the efforts that the VA as well as organizations down at the grassroots level like this have helped reduce the number of veteran suicides. They did just release the VA figures, I think it was about a month ago, they're usually a couple years behind. So the numbers that they were reporting were for 2020. And they did have some very good statistics, showed that the number of veteran suicides had gone down, but there's still more work to do because one is too many, obviously. Well, I'm going to continue to be out and about in the community, talk about the services that are available for veterans in the county, and absolutely continue to try to stamp out veteran suicide, not just in Warren County, but in the United States of America as well. Something I'm very passionate about, something I'll spend the rest of my life doing, I would imagine. And I look at guys, older veterans than myself, like Jerry Ferris and John Looker and some of the other. They're out there all the time, every day, just talking about these issues, because no matter how much we're out there talking about and making the public aware of what services are available for them, we always find people that don't know that it's available. Every single day we come across somebody that's never heard of it before. So it's very gratifying work to do. It's something I'm very passionate about, but it's something that's vitally needed. If you're a veteran in Warren County, just be aware of the services that are available through the Warren County Veteran Service Commission, as well as the resources that are available if you feel in dire need of some mental help, some mental health issues. Just be aware that there are people that are ready to step in and help you, and suicide is not the answer. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and there are plenty of loving, kind people out there that want to help, and just stretch out your hand and someone will grab it.
Well, this will be my 16th year with the commission now. I also served, when I first went into veteran services, I went in as a driver. And there was only 2 of us at that time. So it was me and Paul Trimble, and I think a lot of people know Paul Trimble. He just passed away here within the last month. But we drove for the veteran services, and now we have 14 drivers, and we do an average of 24,000 miles a month that we drive. And we also carry about 700 different veterans to their appointments And it doesn't just include the veterans. It's widows of the veterans and anybody else that really needs help. We also take care of a lot of people. We have a fund set aside for those that need help with their electric bill, their rent, gas, food. We do all that for those people, as well as we have 5 service officers who help with the claims, getting people to go ahead and file their claim. And the nice thing about it is that we're local. You don't have to go through the Dayton VA. Those people handle thousands and thousands of claims. It's more personal for us to handle those claims for you. And we also have a fund that we've set up that we are doing this year. We just installed the new Purple Heart Memorial down at our memorial. We installed new lighting down there. And if you go by at night, it's flashing red, white, and blue all night. So, even till the early mornings. Well, my military service began in November of 1967. And I started out, went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. Spent 13 weeks there, and then we were moving on to the advanced infantry training. And that was at Fort Gordon in Georgia. Well, we'd been kind of confined for 13 weeks at Fort Benning. Couldn't go out, couldn't do anything. And the bus pulls into Fort Gordon, and I see on the sign, it said, "This is a women's base." I see a bowling alley, I see a theater, I see a place where people can actually go have a cold beer. Unfortunately, our bus didn't stop there. It went on back 10 miles into the wilderness, and we stayed in Quonset huts with a 55-gallon drum for a shower, 1 payphone that you could only use on Sunday, and with 324 guys, you could never get to that place. So I was in my 7th week of being there at Fort Gordon, and my sweetheart back home already had our wedding plans. So I went to the first sergeant and I said, "First Sergeant, I've got a wedding. Can I be excused for the weekend to go home and do that?" And he said, "No, you're mine." I said, "Okay." Well, then later on, all of this camp was run by Vietnam veterans. And one of the Vietnam veterans came up to me, and he was from Cincinnati. He said, "You know, John," said, "if somebody was standing out by the road, I'd probably pick him up and take him to the airport. And then when he came back, I'd probably pick him up at the airport and bring him back." So he did. So I was AWOL for about 3 days. And when I came back, he said, "You better go report to the first sergeant. He is mad." So I went in and reported to him, but I thought I was going to get brig time or something. But no, he put me on KP duty for the remainder of the 6 weeks. So not only did I have to do all the PT and everything associated with the advanced infantry training, I had to go ahead and pull KP duty, starting about 3 a.m. in the morning, ending up about 11 o'clock at night. And then back up at 3 a.m. to go to the mess hall, and then at 5 o'clock going out and doing my stuff during the day, coming back to the mess hall. So it was pretty strenuous, but it was worth it. I got married, and at the end of the 13 weeks, all of us were there for airborne training. Well, there was 234 of us, and when the first sergeant asked, "Okay, how many of you are going on back to Fort Benning for flight or for parachute training?" And out of the 234, I think there was only 30 of them that said yes. The rest of us were ready to go home. We'd spent 26 weeks away, and we knew we'd get a 30-day leave, and we knew we were going to Vietnam. So it was well worth it. Then I went from there, after my 30-day leave, I was flying to Seattle to go to Vietnam. And I got to Seattle and I thought, you know, I don't know if I'll ever get back to the States. So I took a couple days and spent just touring Seattle, which was really nice. And I went back and I reported in. I said, I think I'm AWOL. The MP said, go look on that list and see if your name's on there. It wasn't. He says, go find you a place to sleep. So that's what I did. I got in country, Vietnam, first night, Cam Ranh Bay, and they hit the ammo dump. When they hit the ammo dump, it was like the 4th of July all night long, only worse. And I thought, what am I into here now? So anyhow, we left a couple days later. I was with the 1st Cav, and the 1st Cav unit was a unit that they would pick you up and drop you from one firefight to another firefight. So the first one we came upon was the Mother's Day massacre on May 2nd. And we lost about 6 out of our group of 26 that day. And then it just continued on with firefight to firefight. Finally, we moved from the DMZ down to the A-Shell Valley. And at the A-Shell Valley, it was everything they said it was. It was bad. And on March the 4th, I received my first Purple Heart with shrapnel. On March the 6th, I received my second Purple Heart with shrapnel. And on March the 9th, I had 2 friends that I was with over there, Billy Bayham and Earl Longstreth. And Earl just had enough time on March the 8th to fly back home, and he was completely out of the service. He wouldn't leave the field. So the next, he got on the chopper at noon. We got a new guy, Alton Ellis, that had just been in country. And that night we were out on patrol down around the Cambodian border. And they wanted us to there was 2 groups of us, B Company and A Company. And A Company was set up in the woods, and for some reason our first lieutenant set us up in a rice paddy. So about midnight, you pulled 2 hours on, 4 hours off, 2 hours on, 4 hours off. Well, it was Alton's time to pull guard duty. And of course, the first night you're in country, you're just scared to death. And he thought he saw some Vietnamese walking along the path up there and took a couple shots. Well, that meant all of us had to get up around midnight. Wasn't too shortly after that that they hit us. And they had us there. We were fortunate there was a ravine about 50 yards away from us. So the ones that survived the first hit got to the ravine, and Alton was the first one to get it. He was right between Billy and I when he got it. And the ravine started out large with us all spread out. And as more people got hit, we kept getting closer and closer and closer. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I got shot with the AK-47 in my right shoulder. And the doc, Mike Morgan, we called him Doc Morgan, shot me up with some morphine, and it helped for a while, but the bleeding just wouldn't hardly stop. So Billy, he took his t-shirt off, put it on my shoulder. After I was able to fire for a little bit, but then it just got to the point where I couldn't. So he would put his t-shirt over my shoulder, push me back into the ravine, and then sit on me to try and help stop the bleeding. Well, we went like that. We were almost out of ammunition. Billy said, I gotta leave you, John, for just a little bit. So where you going, Billy? He says, I'm going back to pick up the ones that got killed in that first round, pick up their ammunition and stuff. So he did. And that's probably what got us through till daylight. And when daylight came, the Cobras came in, cleared everything out, but we estimated there was about 200 of them that had us surrounded. Later on at one of the reunions, Captain Porter, who just passed away last year, said there was 500 that had us surrounded, the two groups. There were 11 killed that night, 38 wounded out of the 52. So there was only 4 that came out without a scratch. And the next morning, after the Cobras cleared it out, the medevac helicopters came in, and they loaded me on a helicopter. On the top rack, there was 3 racks. They loaded me on the top, my arm was dangling over the side. Billy told the corpsman, said, get his arm up on his chest. And the corpsman told him, he's going to lose that arm anyhow. Billy pulled out his .45. I told you to get his arm up on his chest. So he did, put it up there. And that's the last thing I remember till I got to the field hospital in July. And when I got there, they patched me up. I was there for a couple days, and then they sent me to Guam. And when they sent me to Guam, I was in the hospital there. And then from there, I flew back to Valley Forge for more recovery. So in the hospital, you saw a lot of people with legs missing, arms missing. And I didn't want my family to see that. So I wouldn't allow my family to come over to Valley Forge to visit me or anything. And on July the 17th, they finally released me from the hospital and I went home. But I forgot a little piece in there. Earl, who left the day before, that's the first thing I saw when I woke up. Him standing at the end of the bed. I can't leave you for one day. And Earl just passed away. He lived in Pennsylvania 2 years ago. And I work with a nonprofit group called Blue Skies for Good Guys and Gals. And what we do is we bring in about 50 warriors, Purple Heart, Gold Star, first responder families every year. And the president of the Gold Star had a plane. I was going to drive over there. It was about 14 hours over and 14 hours back. He said, I'll fly you over, John. So I got to fly over and meet the rest of Earl's family. I knew his wife because she'd come to some of the reunions we had. But it was just, I lived with the PTSD for all the years, and there was some real frequent ones that kept coming up. On December the 2nd, 68, we had this first lieutenant, his name was Guy, and Lieutenant Guy came in the country. We just came in from like a 45-day out. And dusty, dirty, you know, because you didn't get a lot of change of clothes. And they set us down right next to the helicopter pad. And we'd no more and got our gear off. And this sergeant came up and said, Looker, Longstreth, Bayham, front and center, bring your weapons and your ammunition. Okay, so that's what we did, was we came up, got up, and what happened was, when they brought him in, he put us on the back of a truck. And when he put us on the back of the truck, we got down the road a little ways, And when we got down, the lieutenant came out and he said, there's cold beer, cold drinks, and some food right there in that cooler. Go ahead and get what you need. I want to go down to this stream down here and get cleaned up. So we were able to get in there and get cleaned up also. And it was just nice. But 3 days later, we were in a rubber plantation, and the lieutenant was between Earl and I, and Billy was on the other side. And he started to charge the bunker. When he started to charge, he got gunshot right in the head. So he wasn't in country very long and died. So what I've been doing since that time is trying to help veterans. I belong to a lot of different veterans organizations, and I work with veterans a lot. And coming up here next Thursday, the 17th, they're actually doing a play on the Battle of Angel's Wing, where I got my last Purple Heart, up at Edison State College in Piqua. And I've got 11 students that are representing the 11 that were killed that night. And they're speaking and I'm telling about the battle. Well, hopefully I continue to help out veterans. I serve on 2 national committees for the American Legion. One of them is for education and employment. And yesterday, while I was out at LECI for their ceremony, I met the warden out there, and he is working on a similar type program. So I'm hoping to work with him to get that program, build on that program. Because one of the things that the new veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, there's no transition for them. And at the national level, we're trying to set up something where they just don't come back and go to work like we did. You know, people thought you were on a vacation somewhere, and that's not necessarily true. I'm working with them on that. I also have 2 programs I work for. I'm the Department of Ohio chairman for the oratorical contest, which is for freshmen to seniors. And what they do is they give an 8 to 10 minute speech on the Constitution and your rights and responsibilities as a citizen of the Constitution. Then each year we have 4 amendments and pull one of them out of the hat. They have to speak 3 to 5 minutes on that. Last year at Nationals, I sit on the National Committee also, but last year at Nationals, the winner won $25,000 in scholarship money. Second place, $22,500, and third place was $20,000. But I escorted a girl up there from Alabama for 4 years. From Georgia. And she'd never won. She won as a freshman in the state, sophomore, junior, and senior. She never won the big money. The last year as a senior, she got in the final 9, but she didn't win the big money. And she earned over $38,000 in scholarship money by winning at each level. The other one I participate in, I serve as a trustee and commissioner for Buckeye Boys State, which is an American Legion program where we bring juniors to Miami University. And we have about 1,000 juniors from all over the state. And they actually learn how to run a government, and they can be anything from governor down to dog catcher. But everybody has a job. There's no unemployment at Boys State. So it's a week to shape a lifetime is what we call the program. And I've had so many of those that have been through the program that continually call me or say, hey, John, thanks for letting me go to this. But that's something we do. Warren County, in Warren County Veterans Services, we have so many different ways to help veterans. All we need to do is get the word out. We've tried through advertising, TV, radio, but I know there's still a lot of veterans out there that don't know about our office. Like I said before, we got transportation to and from doctor's appointments, whatever appointments you might have, physical therapy. We've got service officers who will help build your claim, and they follow up on your claim. So you don't have to do anything after you fill out the original paperwork. We have a relief fund for veterans who need some help, like rent or electric or gas or food. And our office is open 5 days a week from 7 o'clock till 5 o'clock. So we'd love to have, I wish that we could get more veterans to know about our program, because it is a great program.
Well, I tell you, it's in high school, 1967. And what I did is I decided I wanted to be a Marine. And the only reason was because my dad was working at the Federal Building, and I went down to meet him for lunch one day, and I saw this Marine in his dress blue uniform. And I said, you know what? I want to be one of those. That is exactly the truth. It was because of that uniform and what it looked like. It was so neat. I said, I want to be that. Little did I know what it was going to take in order to do that. So I enlisted on March the 10th, 1967. And the Marine Corps had what they called a buddy plan. It was a 120-day delay for me to go into active duty. But during that delay, I went back to school, finished high school. Unfortunately, we didn't get to actually have our graduation because there was protest of the Vietnam War. And they weren't allowing any of the schools to have their gathering and their graduation. So we were the class that never graduated. But I said that to say this. The thing is that when I went back to school before graduation day came, I convinced 5 of my buddies to join the Marine Corps with me on the buddy plan. And the recruiter told me, he says, now what that buddy plan means is that you get to go to basic training together, you get to go to AIT training, which is advanced infantry training, you go to jungle training together. And we did that. And it was great because we had people and friends that we knew going in, which kind of gave us a leg up. So then we flew to Vietnam together. And the Marines didn't go over to Vietnam to the combat zones as units. We went as individuals. So when we got to Da Nang, we were there for about a week before we deployed, but all 6 of us were separated. And we vowed that we would stay in touch with each other throughout the time through snail mail, because we knew the mail was going to be coming by Huey helicopters when they could find out where the heck we were. And so each tour during Vietnam was 13 months. So we had to do that 13 months before you could either rotate back to the United States or get another duty station. During that first 13 months, all 5 of my buddies were killed. And I felt this responsibility for convincing them to join the Marine Corps with me. During that first 13 months, I was shot 2 different times. And it was devastating. And so what happened after I found out about the last one being killed in an ambush, it was like I was mad. I couldn't understand why I was still here and my buddies were all gone. And so I carry that with me to this day. But I understand in some of the things that I've done and how I've moved forward that it really wasn't my fault, but it's hard to get beyond that. But the second tour in Vietnam, I went to sniper school. And one of the things that allowed me to kind of cope with this was becoming a scout sniper for the Marine Corps. And during that time, that second 13 months, I'm credited with 62 confirmed kills. And every time I logged an enemy kill in my logbook, I logged it as one of my buddies' names. And I just kept going around 5 times, every time, and I got to 62. During that time, I got shot the 3rd time. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to come back from Vietnam. I wanted to be where my buddies were. Well, you know, unfortunately, their parents are all gone now. And I'll be honest with you, when I came back, I didn't have the balls enough to go see him because I didn't know what to say to him. And I remember this to the T, that on July the 7th, 1967, at the Cincinnati airport, all of our families, our moms and dads were there. And I remember one in particular, his mom came over to me and she poked me in the chest with her two fingers like this. And she said, "Jerry, you better take care of Sonny." I said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Mitchell, I got him. I got him." And he was the first one that was killed. So, yeah, I think about it all the time. And it was an emotional situation, and nobody knew about it but me. But when I decided after getting wounded the third time and got out of the hospital, I requested to go back to Vietnam. And they said no. Said, "You're going to Guam." I said, "Well, I just left Guam. I was in the hospital in Guam." He said, "Well, you're going back. You're going to do service there." So I served in Guam, Okinawa, the Philippines, and then from the Philippines, I served as the NCOIC, non-commissioned officer in charge of security at the American Embassy in San Salvador, El Salvador, Central America. That was great duty. I got to tell you, when I first came back, it was 1975. The thing is that I needed a job. Didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. But I also wanted to do something that was out of the ordinary. Because being a Marine, it was like, okay, I can do anything. So I started skydiving, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. Became a skydiving instructor. Got over 2,300 free fall jumps. But it was like, if something happened to me, it wouldn't have bothered me then. One of the things that I attribute to what I'm doing now is God. The thing is serving our country, God and country. And when I was in Vietnam, when I got shot the first time, the first thing I did was I called on Jesus. But I didn't know him then. The second time I got shot, it was like, "Oh God, help me." But I didn't know him then. When I came back, it was like there was a reason why I'm still here. And that reason is what I do today. When I came home from Vietnam, there was nobody to really greet us. We didn't get that welcome home. We didn't get that job well done. We got baby killer. We got hit in the face with tomatoes. We had protests at the airport. So I finally got a job right down in Middletown. And I worked there before retirement for 26 years. And the whole time I worked there, nobody even knew I served. It was nothing that anybody wanted to talk about. Nobody wanted to talk about Vietnam. And the other problem is that, yeah, I had all of these inner demons. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I get through this? Well, it wasn't until the year 2000 that I met a guy over here then that was over at the store here in Springboro, IGA. And the gentleman was sitting out there and he had these hats on and he was a Purple Heart recipient. And he was raising money for the military order of the Purple Heart. And so he had an application for me to sign to join that organization because I had a cover on that said Purple Heart. Little did he know I had 3. And so we got to talking, and in 2000, in the year 2000, I was still working. I was on the road a lot as a sales rep for Armco AK Steel. I didn't make my first Purple Heart meeting until the year 2013. And when I went to that meeting, I met some gentlemen here in Springboro. The gentleman in particular, John Agenbroad, who's the mayor. And long story about him, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. The thing is that when I made that first meeting, it was like I got there and I met some Purple Heart recipients. And when they found out that I was a 3-time Purple Heart recipient, they said, "Oh, man, you got to be 100% service connected." And I said, "Connected to what?" I had no idea. He says, the VA, you're a veteran. Blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I know a veteran. But the VA, I said, I thought the VA was for those veterans who came home who had lost limbs, legs, arms, you know, that were having difficult. He said, no, it's for everybody. These are things that you earn. So there's one particular gentleman there who was a former Montgomery County Veteran Service Commissioner. And he also gave me instructions. He said, Jerry, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go down to Warren County Veteran Service Office. I want you to sign up with one of the service officers. Tell them your story. Take your DD-214 down there. He says, next I want you to go up to the VA, and I want you to get into the medical center. Get your ID card. And I said, okay. So then, in doing that, I go back, I have this appointment with my service officer, I take my DD-214 down there, and I'm sitting down talking to this lady who is currently my service officer today. And as I'm talking to her, she says, I mean, we're in there talking for about a couple hours, and as I'm talking to her, she says, you know what, Jerry? I said, what? She said, you'd make a great commissioner. I said, commissioner? I'm down here trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. How am I going to help somebody else? She just said, you just keep thinking about that. So we went through that process, and it's a long, lengthy process of filing claims and so forth and doing different things. But as I made the rotation in getting that thing done, what happened was one of the seats on the commission board opened up, and that was now 2 years later. And so I said, okay, I applied for that seat as an American Legion member holding that particular seat, because each seat on the board is held by a veteran from all of the services and all of the service organizations, DAV, Purple Heart, American Legion, VFW, etc. So those seats are held by, and there's 5 commissioners on each board. And so I joined the board. And so as a commissioner, we just met like every other Monday for a couple, 3 hours. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. So I decided, when I heard about the service officers going to training, I went to the service officer schools and trained, because as a commissioner, I wanted to know what the service officers are doing in order to help these veterans that are coming in with all these questions and how to and what have you. So in doing that, I got into PTSD, and the PTSD classes helped me. And so that was one of the first claims that my service officer filed for me. 50% compensation I got from the VA because of my PTSD situation. I used to have nightmares. I told you I had 62 confirmed kills. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and in my bedroom, I'd look around, and all of these 62 people were right there in my room with no faces. And it just drove me crazy, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. And so I had to get some help. I had to talk about it. And because of all of that time that I served at Armco, and nobody knew I served, all of those things were pinned up inside me. And so with that being said, it's like, how do I get this out? Now I'm married, and it's like she didn't know what I had done. And it's not something that you just go up to somebody and say, well, this is what I was, and this is what I did, and this is how I did it. But long story short, I'm going through all of this in the training, and I did that for years as I made my way up to be the president of the Warren County Veteran Service Office. I then knew what our service officers knew. I'd learned. And so now what I do that helps me, even in PTSD classes, I still have a counselor that I talk to all the time. But me talking to other vets that are in the same situation not only helps them, but it helps me. And so a lot of my story is starting to come out. In 2020, you'd never hear this story from me. You would never hear about Vietnam. You'd never hear about being a scout sniper. All my buddies getting killed. Not only those 5, but other people that I knew and met while I was in combat. You know, they used to tell us, they said, don't get too close to the guy that's in the foxhole with you, because he may not be here tomorrow. Well, that was bull. because I had to cover his back, he had to cover mine. And when we're sitting in a hole, in the rain, in a puddle, all night long, you're going to tell me I can't get close to this guy? We knew everything about each other. And that's what brought us together. The Marines are a unique unit, and I love being a Marine. So I am proud of what I do today. And so now I'm on, you name it, I'm on the Warren County Veterans Suicide Prevention Coalition. I'm on the Mayor's Advisory Board for Diversity here in Springboro. I'm also on the Springboro Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm one of the commissioners that handle all of the American Legion posts within Warren County. I'm past department commander for the Military Order of the Purple Heart for the state of Ohio. I'm currently the commander for the Military Order of the Purple Heart Honor Guard, and I do guest speaking all over the place. I volunteer for hospice, not only Hospice of Dayton, but Hospice of Butler, Warren County, and Hospice of Middletown. We've just completed several Veterans Day celebrations with those folks. But one of the things that I do as a volunteer for hospice is that I go see these veterans in hospice who are about to pass on. I do a special ceremony that highlights their service. And a lot of times, if the patient is responsive, I can have that individual talking with me, and they're able to open up veteran to veteran. When the families are there, 90% of the time, they hear stories about their dad, their uncle, their grandfather, their husband that they've never heard before. And it's those things that help me. And God has directed me. God has put this on me and said, you know, this is why you're still here. There's a mission for you. You're a Marine. He tells me, you know, that eventually you will be guarding the gates of heaven. But right now, I need you here. I got to tell you, you know, like I said, God and country, and just doing whatever I can for our veterans. And I'll do that until he decides to take me. But, you know, my grandkids, passing on the legacy, the information, keeping them safe. My wife, you know, we've been married 48 years. Like I said, we've been living here in Springboro for 43. And I love this community. And I love everybody in it. And it's just magnificent. But all I want to do is help. I want to give back. You know, for all the veterans in Warren County, if you haven't had an opportunity to come down to visit our office, please go on our webpage. Please contact the Warren County Veterans Service office at 320 East Silver Street. You can call a number to make an appointment at 513-695-2717. Make an appointment. Bring your DD-214. If you just like an ID card, just come on down. We'll take your picture and hand you your ID card right there. But I've got to tell you that those of you who are out there that have no idea what you have earned as a veteran, stop in and see us. We'll take care of that for you.